Okay, so yeah, Deadwood, the movie, the HBO 2019 continuation of the show Deadwood. Bit of an epic quest with ourselves. We covered Deadwood, the TV show, about 4 years ago now, when it looked like it had no possibility of continuing. Weirdly, I don't know if you remember this, Chris, that the announcement by Garrett Dillahunt that they were bringing it back actually happened the day after we finished reviewing all of season 3.
Oh my god.
Which is, incredibly strange timing. But yeah, so what happened with Deadwood was it was a 3-season long TV show, revisionist western that ran from 2004 to 6. And it covered about a year, the original run, in the town of Deadwood. The premise of the show was that it was a mining camp, completely lawless, where all these disparate characters came in order to make their fortune. And hey ho, as you always do when you go and find a gold mine, society formed, and it followed these characters, a saloon keeper, a sheriff, a rich widow, as they came to become pillars of the community, and a very truncated version. But yeah, basically the show was about the forming of order from chaos, by using this as a sort of metaphor for the foundation of society. The show was supposed to run for 5 seasons, and show sort of the town of Deadwood eventually going to the point where it became fully part of sort of America, gaining statehood, which it does in this movie. But after season 3, the constant rewrites that David Milch was doing on the set, coupled with the huge cast and the huge budget of the show, very realistic looking western, it got over 100 million a season, resulted in HBO cancelling the show 2006, and it looked like after several years and failed attempts to bring it back as a 2-movie thing, a shortened 4th season, a full 4th season at one point, several attempts over the years, and after a few years it just looked like the whole thing was dead. Then HBO decides to bring it back in order to sort of cap the show off with one 2-hour-long movie, which is what we've got. I've heard various speculation on why they did this. I think the most likely one is that they've got their HBO Go, which is highly popular now. It's like the streaming service for all HBO's original content. Far Wire, stuff like that's on there. Partly people didn't want to watch Deadwood because they thought it didn't have an ending, because it got cancelled. And I think this is an attempt to close it off and make people think that Deadwood actually has got a beginning, middle, and end. Apparently people don't want to watch a cancelled TV show now. Also, it is one of the most acclaimed shows of all time. Definitely one of the top 3 HBO shows. So kind of a legacy thing here to actually close it off with how they how it should sort of go, rather than season 3's ending, which I'm personally a fan of, but a lot of people find unsatisfying and would have liked to have seen a 4th and 5th season of. Also, they have had on retainer for years David Milch, the mercurial talent behind Deadwood, NYPD Blue, certain seasons of Hillside Blues, the show John from Cincinnati, everyone's favourite David Milch creation, and Luck. They've had him on retainer for ever since Deadwood, basically, since 2004. Recently, it's been announced that he's writing the show. He's become incredibly ill. He's got Alzheimer's. It's probably going to be the last thing he ever makes. So it also concludes their sort of relationship with David Milch. And I think, not to get too strongly on the movie yet, there is definitely an collegiate quality to it, which seems like the final work of someone. So get to the film itself. The film is 10 years on from the conclusion of Deadwood. The town is becoming a state, and that sort of brings all the characters from the original show back into it. And it follows now Senator Hearst, originally just a prospector, now he's gone on to actually become a member of the Senate, as he comes to the town to sort of bestow statehood on it, and the various problems that come from him as the sort of town, the person who nobody likes and everyone's scared of, and his sort of reaction to the various townspeople there. I don't want to get too much in spoilers there, but now going forward, to be completely... Well, first of all, Chris, would you recommend Deadwood movie?
I suppose, but I think that I wrote a little review about this from my blog, actually. And I think the appeal of the film is limited. I think if you love Deadwood, you love the show, then I think you're going to at least find something here that you're going to find satisfying. Whether they kind of went in the right direction with it, I think is down to you, but I think most Deadwood fans could find something in here that they'd appreciate or enjoy, or a performance or a scene, but it's very, very, very specific to, I think, people who loved the show back in the day or have recently discovered it, like myself. I think the appeal is quite limited. I'd be interested in talking to someone who's like never watched Deadwood and like watched the movie just on the off chance. But as a conclusion to the series, and after all these years, I liked it. I thought it was really well done. I enjoyed seeing all these actors coming back to roles that they own. It was fun seeing, especially characters like Al Swearingen and Sheriff Bullock get to kind of round off their characters. And it kind of had a bit of a feeling of almost like coming back home. It's kind of like going back to your old hometown. Seeing what's changed, what stayed the same, and how your feelings have kind of changed towards it, I guess. I think for what it is, considering the circumstances that it was made under, if it does feel a little bit compromised in that they've only got a limited amount of time to do it, the actors' schedules as well, like I think trying to get all these different creative people, to sit down for 4 weeks basically and film this thing, must have been quite a Herculean task. But they managed to pull off something that's good and can certainly scenes and elements can stand with classic Deadwood. Yeah, I think they did a pretty good job. I was satisfied with the movie. I enjoyed it.
Okay, so we'll conclude that as the non-spoilery section because we'll want to get into everything that's in it now. My thoughts are probably slightly more negative. It's a really good film, I think, in and of itself. See, my only problem is, and to get into spoilers now, I feel like that it doesn't feel like 10 years has passed within the universe of the thing. Like it's still focused on sort of cursed, and like all the characters, it seems like it's like a direct continuation of the show, which I found a little bit weird. Like, and the fact that basically the main through line of it, the main plot is that Kirsten's come back and Trixie sort of reveals. So she was supposed to, in the end of season 3, be killed to appease her. She reveals that she's actually still alive, which angers Hearst and causes him to try and take revenge on the town again. Unless if Utter, who owns a piece of property that is telephone line. Is it a telephone line, or is it supposed to be like... Yeah, it's a telephone line, isn't it?
It's just... I don't think it's that. It's he just happens to own a plot of land which Hearst wants to put a telephone line through. It's basically kind of like, yes, it's the only thing, the only bit of land that's stopping him from connecting his route of telephone lines to Deadwood is Charlie Utter's land. Yeah.
So it felt a bit like to be like a rewrite of season 3 in a lot of ways. Like the Utter storyline felt like a recurrence of when, like in like when he's trying to buy up the property land in season 3, there to make the gold mine here for telephone stuff, and specifically when he kills Ellsworth in season 3. The bit with Trixie felt like a bit of a repeat of what he does with Trixie in season 3 itself. Bullock, where he gets angry at Hearst, and that felt like a bit of a repeat of season 3. It felt a bit weird in the way that I feel like it was trying to repeat stuff in season 3 to give it more maybe a conclusion than obviously season 3 didn't really get a neat conclusion. It just felt a bit weird, and I liked being in, as you were saying, I think the main point of it is to be in this environment again, and as you say, it feels like coming home and just hanging out with these characters is really good. It just felt a bit sort of unnecessary, considering that a lot of it seemed to repeat. I almost would like to have seen it without Hurst in it, like just seeing them deal with the consequences of season 3, or maybe not to have done the big. I know obviously with the actors are visibly aged, but like it feels weird to do the 10-year time jump and then still to be dealing with the same things from season 3. I don't know. Did you feel any of that, or was this just me?
Yeah. I mean, my kind of biggest kind of criticism of it is that I do think the plot is a bit thin. Like, you know, as I say, you know, for me, all I personally wanted from the Deadwood movie was just to see these characters again, maybe get some closure, and you know, have a couple, you know, good scenes, you know, some good dialogue scenes. I definitely see your point about it kind of feeling like it pretty much directly picks up after season 3. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you know, like it does feel a bit weird that, you know, like, oh, Hurst is back in town again. You know, he's here to cause trouble. Yeah, that did feel a bit odd. But you know, at the same time, yeah, no, actually, yeah, there's no two ways around it really. Yeah, it did feel a bit weird, to be honest. But I guess I was okay with it. Because, you know, the thing for me is, I think that maybe now, if we were to go back and redo like our Deadwood reviews, now that I've seen the show twice now, my opinions of season 3 have changed quite a lot. Like, you know, I used to kind of think, you know, it was good, had some, you know, great moments, but overall it was, you know, the weaker season. But now I definitely put season 3 as being as good as, you know, most of season 1 and season 2. You know, it's definitely no downturn in quality. And it does to a degree, like as we kind of talked about before, thematically kind of end the series. But there is that part of me, which is the story narrative side of me, and I'm kind of like, right, okay, I want to see what happens next to the town. I want to see where this goes. What's the next plot development? So I guess on that level, it satisfied me. But yeah, you're right in saying that I don't think they handled this is Deadwood 10 years later all that well. Outside of the town's got a bit bigger, and time has not been kind to some of the characters. My biggest, and this is a clearly off note, my biggest surprise was we brought back the newspaper guy.
Oh, Merrick.
Yeah, Merrick, yeah. I can't remember what the actor's called, but I'm very surprised we brought him back.
Jeffrey Jones, I think he is, yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right, yeah. He's only in it for like a couple very, very brief scenes. I guess just for posterity more than anything, but it's a bit weird seeing him again. But yeah, no, I do agree. They didn't handle the time skip like as well as maybe they could have done. Definitely not as well as maybe like some other series that have kind of done, you know, the show 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line. But you know, it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's one of the things where you can't avoid the fact everyone's like older. And also, it's like, where would you go? So the original trajectory of sort of season 4 and 5 of Deadwood would have been that it picked up with Hurst rides out, and then it's how does the camp deal with the consequences of what Hurst has done, which is basically to force them to sort of morally compromise to a degree they haven't before. And like Al would be a massively reduced figure in their town. And it would be about how, like, yeah, government and sort of more of a bureaucracy takes place rather than the informal structure they had before, with Al as sort of the chief of the camp, but without any formal power structure. So that would have been interesting, but there's no way you can really do that in 2 hours, I suppose. Like, there's just too much. I think, like, yeah, the time jump is needed for how, like, the actors are, and to give it a, like, something clean to do in a movie, like, something that can be rounded off in 2 hours, but yeah, it's just weird that the characters see. The thing that annoyed me most actually was specific, like, Alma in this is still. Yeah. It's been 10 years later, and she's come back to the camp, and it's still like they're trying to do the thing where it's her and Bullock, and it just feels weird that her character is the exact same as 10 years later in regards to Bullock, when like it's like she hasn't really been in that camp still. Like, it feels weird that her and Bullock would still have like this. Well, she doesn't really get very much to do. She maybe has like 10 lines in the whole thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's like she has like a few like tentative looks at him, and like it just doesn't feel like they've evolved at all in the sort of 10-year gap that's happened within the show. It almost feels like it's like Well, the problem I think with Alma's character, it's in season 3 as well, which is a bit of a shame because you'd think they could try and rectify that by giving her a proper ending. But they basically do what they do in sort of season 2 and 3 with her, where she's like, she wants to be with Bullock, but she can't because he's with his wife. But yeah, it doesn't advance that or even conclude that in a way which I think is a major problem with season 3, that Alma doesn't get anything to do, even though she's like one of the main, she's probably the third main character after Al and Seth, so yeah, it felt unsatisfying that her character hadn't gotten something to do or just to move on from that central conflict.
I agree, and like Alma was definitely one of the definitely one who got the short shrift a bit more. I mean, I thought all the scenes she was in were good. They were good scenes. I think the scene where they auctioning off Charlie Utter's land, I think was good. It was kind of unexpected for Alma to do it. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I'd like to have seen a bit more of her in it. Aside from that, though, like I think most of the other characters get off okay. They're in it about as much as you need them to be. I think. I think Bullock's really good in this. I think Al is really interesting in this. I'm trying to get any of the others. One thing that was a bit odd, it was like the whole like Trixie plot line as well. Kind of pretty much directly picking up where she was, theoretically, like 10 years ago. It did feel a bit weird that she's still going through feeling guilty about what happened and why they had to kill that. I mean, it probably would play on you, but it felt a bit weird that she was still dealing with that, like pretty much 10 years after the fact. I don't know. I'm interested in kind of what the thought process was behind that. But I don't know how much of it was the show was about specials. What the aim of it was really, as you say. What is the goal? I think is the ultimate problem with it. But as I said, for me, for what it's worth, I thought it hit the important notes that I wanted, which was to kind of just go back one more time. Maybe get some closure to some of the characters. I mean, Ian McShane, man, like he's so good in this, and it's kind of weird seeing him in like the position that he's in. I think in the special, like he used to have all his fingers in all of the pies, and now all he can do is just watch. Watch as kind of the town that he basically helped to build is kind of essentially running and making decisions for themselves, which is, I kind of wrote in my review how it kind of bookends the series really, where kind of like, the legends of the Wild West are kind of disappearing into the background. They're kind of not becoming as relevant anymore or as important anymore. Kind of similar to, Wild Bill Hickok in the start of season 1. Basically coming to Deadwood just to play poker and get drunk. He's not there to save the day or anything. And I think Al's kind of similar, where his time is done. Now it's time for the concept of the town and the community itself to defend itself. He needs to take a bit of a step back. So I thought that was good. I thought that was satisfying on a thematic level, and for kind of how Al is used in the special. I keep calling it a special, but it's a movie. I know it's a movie, but I keep calling it like a special. How do you feel?
I definitely agree. Yeah, I think Al is the strongest part of this because it does feel like there's a reason for him to sort of come back, and so yeah. In the show, he has a vague illness which is sort of killing him essentially, and I think that they're trying to do that way. It's like it's a reflection on both mortality itself and sort of the death of the old guard of the camp, and what's sort of coming next. Like you see more of obviously they've got the. Hurst is the senator for the state that it's in, and in the end, it's implied that Saul's going to go on to become to go into politics as well. So I think it's moved, and also in the auction scene you mentioned, I think it's important, as you say, that Alma actually buys up Utter's lot. So it's like the passing of the old guard of Al, even though he doesn't do anything in that scene where it's being sold off. It's like the town will be okay after he's sort of gone. And like what he's passed on to the town is, I think there is an actual reason for that part of it to be there, and I think that's when the movie that it's like strongest, because you're coming back to the town, but also in a new way, which is to show the old town's hero essentially dying off. And yeah, what an end scene as well, where it's him and Trixie.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, what is the last line? Because you said that it's one of the best last lines ever. I know what it is, but I'll let you say it in Ian McShane X Brawl, if you like.
Well, Trixie is basically, like she's watching over Al's final. He's on his deathbed, and it's a great scene, and Trixie starts giving the last rites, and she says, "Our Father who art in heaven," and Al says, "Let him fucking stay there." It's just so Deadwood. It's so Al. It just feels like such a perfect send off, to that character. Someone always spat in the face of, any kind of authority or any kind of higher power. Like he's even something as simple as being on his deathbed, he's still going kicking and screaming. And I've heard loads of people call the final line like one of the best final lines of anything ever. It is great. It's such a satisfying note to end on, I think. So I was really happy with the way Al was handled overall. I thought we did a really, really good job with him. And to do him like in a really unexpected way, like ostensibly he doesn't do anything kind of like, he's not like fighting Bullock like outside the balcony like at the start of season 2 or like anything ostensibly kind of, quote unquote cool. But, they give him the perfect kind of send-off of that character. I probably reacted to it maybe a bit more positively because the last season finale I saw, was Game of Thrones, which completely spits on the face of its characters and then squashes the spit into the ground and then spits on it again. This special definitely doesn't do that. I do think there is at least a degree of basic respect for the characters, which, as I said, the polar opposite of how Game of Thrones handled things.
Oh yeah, and in terms of like how bad it could have been, like anyone just needs to watch like Arrested Development season 4 or 5, where no one was in the same room at the same time, and the characters don't feel like the proper characters, and yeah, everything is just completely wrong. Like this at least feels like the universe is set up originally, and I think there is, like with at least the Al storyline, there is a reason for it to come back, like to comment on sort of morality and the way that towns change from being run by essentially petty gangsters into sort of like proper, fully functioning bureaucracies with people underneath them and hierarchies that aren't actually based around just sort of power. It's also government election, like being an elected official and having like a use within the town. Like there is at least a reason for this to come back, unlike Jesus Christ, like Arrested Development, or like even like the X-Files. Like they brought so many stuff back that's terrible. Like this is at least a really good, it's a great film in and of itself, and the dialogue's all great. There's just little individual things, and sort of the main overarching reason I think for it to come back is the issue. But like objectively, it's still written by David Milch. All the dialogue is still great.
Yeah, because because the thing is, we're coming from a position where we probably, both me and you, basically hold Deadwood has been one of the greatest, if not like the greatest TV show ever made. And it's hard to recapture that magic. Like when you're on a roll, and it's cut short, it's hard to get back into that groove, I think. And I personally think, considering the circumstances, I think they did. I think it turned out probably about as well as it could have done. Considering they had to fit quite a bit in. And part of me kind of gets the need to have like a structure. And it's maybe a little bit too late in the proceedings to introduce maybe like a completely new like antagonist. I mean, I personally would have liked to have been antagonistless, but I get you need to have some kind of conflict, and I think it's fine to have it be Hearst. I just think maybe the connecting tissue could have been improved upon. That's my personal biggest thing with it. Otherwise, every character gets a great scene. I love like Calamity Jane and Joni Stubbs finally sorting things out. I thought that was great. I liked how it kind of echoed kind of the ending of season 2 as well, where the movie has a funeral, Charlie Utter's funeral, before going into a wedding. And And I kind of liked how I had the echoes of season 2 there, and how season 2 ends. You know, like Deadwood is life and Deadwood is a death. You know, it's all things. So yeah, I thought that was great. Seeing Charlie Utter get killed was heartbreaking. That was when that started to happen, and I knew we were going to go there. I was like, no, the one character I didn't want to die, like any of the other characters. Trying to think who else was really good in this. Actually, one thing that kind of EB, yeah, EB had a great scene, and EB actually redeemed himself as well. Like he actually did do one goddamn good thing in his life, where he, told Sheriff Bullock, about what was going down. EB's redeemed basically. I love that scene of EB trying to work using a telephone. Like I thought that was amazing. The only kind of character who I thought was a bit odd and I couldn't quite work out the purpose of was the new prostitute who's come to work at Al's. Do you remember her?
Yeah, she was then sort of the passed that as its main trade, like prostitution, and the fact that no one really pays any attention to her. But you see, it's because in season 1, obviously, you get the character played by Kristen Bell, who's being groomed by first Al's bad, and Al sort of realizes what's going on, and then Powers Booth's character, what's its side, the way that and the way it's like a commodity. And the way that when she's in the bar now, everything's too busy and she can't sort of be... There's no one there to try and take her into sort of the world of prostitution. But yeah, it felt weird. It felt like not developed as fully as it possibly could have been, if that was the aim.
Yeah.
And I suppose as a contrast to Trixie as well, maybe. Like the way that she wants to get into the world of prostitution, but she can't break into it in the way that the other characters in the show in the original run were mainly... The female ones were either prostitutes or wealthy, husbands, wives, and the way they were adjacent to maybe the way the town had evolved slightly. But yeah, it was weird and didn't really come across in the film. Weird and all that she's the one new character as well that's introduced into her.
Yeah. Because at first I thought maybe a purpose was going to be, well, we need a new character in there to maybe explain to some of the audience who might not necessarily have seen original series, someone a character in there for someone else basically explain to what's going on. Who's this guy? Well, he's doing this, but we didn't really use it for that either, which I was kind of glad about. But then, yeah, I don't think she was utilised all that terrifically. So it's kind of a bit of a weird one. Ostensibly I really liked it. It was really good. And I guess maybe on my next rewatch of Deadwood, the whole thing, when I come to the movie, I guess that might be the best way to make a judgment on how well it works as an epilogue overall. I got done rewatching it fairly recently. I think I just have to rewatch it again. I think maybe straight after the series and see if it provides that satisfying coda that I want.
Yeah, well, it's weird because I never thought season 3 was that bad an ending. Obviously, I would have loved to have seen sort of season 4 and 5. But I think there's something kind of beautiful in a way of the way that Deadwood, which is a show about how you make life out of sort of between it has all these huge things that happen in it, deaths and murders and all this stuff that goes around. It's about improvising sort of life around that, and the way that as the show constantly repeats in its dialogue, fate is you can't control the way your life's gonna go. There's all the dialogue about if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. There's one bit where someone goes, the only way to guarantee your certainty is to put a contract to get fucked. Great lines like that. It's all about how things do sort of come out of chaos, and the fact that the show was cancelled and you had to improvise an ending I did kind of like about the original. I didn't really even think it needed to sort of come back apart. Because I think as a show, it's uniquely, what Deadwood is uniquely suited to a TV show. It needs those lunges, and it needs all the bits where nothing's happening and people are just joking around and laughing. And it needs the 12 hours to sort of build up everything that happens within the town to the point where it becomes like in the original seasons, all the best episodes are in the tail end of it because it built up all these small accumulated details. So it just feels weird. Like, I think more than any other show, apart from maybe The Wire, this is like a show. It needs to be a show. It can't be any other medium to work. So I think bringing it back as a movie is a bit of a weird choice. Like, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Like the way that, like, yeah, like it almost feels like to the project, it feels like at odds to make it into like to do it as this medium rather than as like maybe another 12-hour season. I suppose that you can only do with what you've got. Eventually, you know, it's still a commercial thing where they probably wouldn't have given him 12 hours to tell the story. So I probably did the best they could with it. It just feels a bit weird to convert this into a like Sopranos. They're making that into a prequel movie.
Yeah.
I don't think it will work, but I could see how Sopranos would work. You know, standalone, mainly episodes. Individual episodes of that work really strongly. Well, where Deadwood doesn't really. It has to be sewn in. It has to be the epic sweep of it. Obviously, I don't think the Sopranos prequel, you know, looks that good, but I think I could see a way where Sopranos film could work. But Deadwood as a film just feels like a weird concept.
Yeah, no, I agree. You know, like it's that whole like kind of Dickensian novel style, which gives kind of the appeal of Deadwood. And you're right about the Sopranos in that you could fill in a period of time, you know, because Sopranos Season Wonders is quite a weird time skip where it's kind of like it's a time skip you're not really aware of, where it fast forwards time from Tony being a capo to being the heir apparent, you know. So yeah, you could fill that gap there. But then, yeah, like with the Deadwood movie, you almost want that bit more time. You want it to breathe a little bit more. I'd have killed for another season. But, you know, that's why pretty much everything I've said so far while we've been talking about this is kind of predicated on this is the best they could do with the resources and time that's been given to them, you know?
Yeah.
And again, I imagine a lot of it as well is down to schedules, you know? These actors are also busy with other things, you know. There's maybe we only had Alma for 5 days, and we had to film all of Alma's scenes in 5 days, or maybe we only had Sol Star for X amount of days. He looks really old, by the way. He's the one who's aged the worst, I think. Like, we had to replace Sol Star, but his past 10 years must have been rough on him because he looks really old.
I think Timothy Oliphant, like, because of the mustache, looks weird. I know it's not him because he looks exactly the same as a person, but he looks weird in this with that mustache.
Yeah, I know what you mean, actually. Yeah. But yeah, I was saying, yeah, that's why I kind of keep saying, like, you know, for what they've got and the time that's been given to them, they did as good a job as they could have done, I think. It's a tricky one. It's an interesting beast. So yeah, that's it basically. You know, it's the last time these actors will, you know, get into those costumes and, you know, take on those characters, and the last time, you know, we get to see Deadwood on screen. And, you know, like it's interesting as well in that, you know, it's almost become like its own mythology onto itself. I kind of like how they've not followed the story of Deadwood as what the original plan was, like the actual place. Because, you know, in real life, Al Swearingen, you know, died penniless, drunk, homeless, you know, on the streets. You know, that's how he died. And I think that would have been a really satisfying ending to a fully developed 5 seasons. But I'm kind of glad they didn't go with that in the movie. I kind of like how it's our version of Al going out in our version of Al in a very Al way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of like how they ended their own mythology as opposed to ending the history of the real place. Because obviously, as we know, with season 4 and 5, we were going to get into how the town burned down and how they rebuilt it. And yeah, basically the fate of Al Swearingen and what happened to him. So I kind of like how they kind of ended their own version. Oop, hell, sorry. I kind of like how they ended their own version as opposed to ending the real history, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there are some weird things though, considering like again with the 10-year jump, like in obviously end of season 3, Bullock's been he's not a sheriff anymore because Hearst rigged the elections. And Sol's supposed to have been mayor at the end of season 3. Do you remember that? Where there's the election, him versus EB. and EB loses to Sol, but EB is now the mayor still, and Sol, at the end of it, Al tells him to get into politics, which is what he ostensibly did at the end of 3. So it's weird with the time jump that you were saying about them like not following the exact storyline of that. It also like ignores some of the stuff that's set up in. It doesn't really sort of matter that much. But as you're saying that, I think it is nice that they decided not to just go with like open it with Al sort of, I don't know, penniless and poor and ranting in the streets of Deadwood or something about it's like with old sort of prestige kind of stuff. And it's good that I think the Al stuff as well with this feels maybe heavily autobiographical as well with the tragic circumstances of David Milch's life, where this will be the last thing he does, and he has Alzheimer's, and there is probably no way he can do it. Like, it does have an elegiac quality of someone trying to make their last work as well, which I think is really interesting in this.
Yeah.
Because David Milch has said that he thinks this is his best work, like Deadwood. It must be interesting to be like 71, you know it's going to be your last thing you ever do, and it is also the conclusion of the thing you consider to be sort of your magnum opus. It's interesting for someone to have that sort of awareness of what they're creating as their final work.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's part of it as well. Is why I'm a little bit soft towards it, where pretty much they were, David Milch was able to end it on his terms, which I like. Because again, comparing it to Game of Thrones, which just fizzled out, died. At least this kind of, at least with Deadwood, it did come from a genuine place of passion. He wants to end the story, and he wants to, as you say, kind of cap off what could be the final thing he ever does. Which, it's interesting, as you say, and, maybe my heart's a bit more softened by that. I was able to give it I kind of rescind. I remember, like, when I finished it, I texted you. I think I was a little bit drunk. As well. I kind of said I loved it, but kind of like maybe slightly on reflection, I more liked it. So it was fine for what it was. I think it did what it needed to do, which was fine with me, I guess. But it's more the missed opportunities that annoyed me about it, but not massively so, not to the detriment of the overall thing.
And hopefully it gets those idiots on HBO Go who refuse to watch it because it's not a real ending to actually give the first 3 seasons a try and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And if it's forcing you, if it's building, like more awareness of what Deadwood is kind of stuff, and it gets more people to watch it. Because I think out of the ones that we mentioned, like The Wire and The Sopranos, and like all the prestige stuff, like even though it's probably the best one, probably the one that people know the least, even though it was bigger than The Wire when it was on, probably because it was cancelled. But I think less people have, tried to watch it. So now I think hopefully at least it will give it the air of being finished. It'll be interesting as well when you watch Twin Peaks: The Return, because that's another thing that cancelled season, cancelled show, came back after a long period of time. And it'll be interesting when we watch that. We can sort of do a thing on the comparison between the two as well. Because you're watching Twin Peaks at the moment. So when you get to The Return, that's an interesting contrast to what they do here. Because I think with Deadwood the movie, it is it's a reassuring return back and stuff. Like Twin Peaks comments more on the time that's gone past and sort of trying to be about sort of nostalgia in a lot of ways that Deadwood isn't. So that'll be interesting to watch. It's sort of a compromised piece. It's as good as it could be under the circumstances. Looks great. It's back in the town. There's that great Mildichin dialogue. It's hard to even say the stuff they should have done differently. Because like, as you were saying, like I don't like the use of Hearst again because it feels like 10 years hasn't passed and it feels like a repeat. But I suppose you couldn't just do like 2 hours of people sort of doing nothing essentially in a film format.
Yeah.
So it's one of them where it's like you can't really you have to criticize sort of what it is as a whole. There isn't like an obvious thing where you go change that and it would be fine. Like everything within, based on the premise that they're working from, it's Hearst again, it's Trixie again, it's this kind of stuff. It's all as good as it could be based on that. It's just that central premise is a bit flawed as a concept, but it's just such a weird beast, really, as you say. Like, there's nothing sort of like this that sort of... I suppose more and more shows are coming back, so Yeah, that's a mid-tier return. Better than the rest of development. Not as good as sort of Twin Peaks return.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. Yeah, as for me, it was even though Laurie felt compromised, I ultimately just felt like I had a big warm blanket around me. Coming back to Deadwood for one last time, I kind of liked it. Didn't love it, but it was as we've kind of talked about and discussed for a compromised vision. I think it was probably about as good as it could have been. Which, yeah. I don't have much else to say, to be honest, on it.
Yeah, let's end with a like a warm sigh, which I think captured it pretty well.
Yeah. Let him fucking stay there.